Well, good evening, everyone. It's so good to be with you again. I'm sorry for all of the time it's taken for us to start these back up, but this year, Base Camp and the Secret Garden took a vacation as well, and I think it was good for it. So we're starting back up tonight, and as you look at the top of your page in Base Camp and the Secret Garden, you'll see that we have a lineup that takes us about through the middle of October at this point. And eventually we'll list Campfire Conversations all the way through December and into next year. So we're so glad you're joining us for this. Tonight, to start off our time, we wanted to have a conversation with Michael Thompson. And many of you know him personally. Many of you have heard him on Campfire Conversations that we've done in the past. But we wanted to bring him back, one, because there's just a lot of things that God is doing in his life and thoughts that God has been giving him, and he's been working over in order to give it to us. And in so, he has written another book now. His first book, if you remember, is Search and Rescue, and now he's written another one called The Heart of a Warrior. And so Sam and John and I were just intrigued with the idea of talking to him about this book and what the process was like and what he was writing about. And of course, he can't give us the whole book in just 40 minutes, but we'd love to hear kind of the major themes of the book and interact with him. And so we're asking you as well. John and Sam and I will interact with Michael on this, but we'd love for you to interact by asking questions, making comments and observations on the chat line, which we'll get back to Michael. So, so glad you're with us. And so, Michael, just real quickly, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really good. We've kind of made the swing like I think everybody's trying to make the swing from summer to fall. And my wife and I, Robin, we have 3 daughters, 21, 19, and 15. And so 2 are now in college, a junior and a freshman, and now a sophomore in high school. So it's a different house as of the last couple weeks, and it's a little quieter. And they came back for Labor Day. They were gone for a couple weeks of college and came back, and we actually have taken deep breaths again, got the house cleaned up again since they left. But we're doing well. You know how so often life goes when your kids are doing pretty well. When 2 of the 3 of ours aren't in a big drama, we're doing pretty well. And right now I think that's kind of the case. But Robin and I are enjoying this swing, this change into from summer to fall, and small groups here locally in Durham and Chapel Hill we're stepping back into. Just like you took a break, I think it's a great idea to kind of take a couple months off, let the soil turn over in everybody's hearts. They start longing to get back together and see some of their friends. And so, yeah, we're kind of in that shift. It's hot still here in North Carolina, 90s. So we're really looking forward to the seasonal change. But yeah, I'm doing well, and it's been good. Been a good couple weeks of transition. Still got one foot in one camp, and I think the other the startup of getting with people and spending time with friends and stuff like that are kind of ramping up.
Good. Hey, while we're in the kind of introduction, how you doing thing, let me just real quickly say, which I forgot before. I just want to remind everybody that we really are gearing things back up in the Secret Garden and Base Camp. So you'll be getting weekly emails just telling you what's going on. We'd love for you to be as involved as would be good for your heart. There's no requirement here to be on all the time to be a good Base Camp or Secret Garden member. We're just here for what you need to recalibrate, reorient, and resupply for your journey, for your calling in your life. But also I want to remind you that we've got an online calling course starting up September 16th. So if you know of anybody who would love to get in on this, and this would just be good for them to do this over 12 weeks rather than try to take a weekend or travel, invite them to do that. We'd love for them to do that. So, gosh, I think those are my 2 big reminders. So with that...
so, Michael, I have a question for you, if I can interrupt you here.
That's what I was going to ask you to do.
Michael, when I talked to you last time, you were talking about the design for your cover, and I went and looked at it. And folks, Gary put it up on the Secret Garden and the Base Camp, but it's beautiful. I love it. So you have the heart of a warrior, but you have heart spelled with 2 different fonts. You have H-E, then you have a capital A, art, and it looks artsy. It looks creative, and Tell me what you meant by that, how you came up with that idea. I love it. It
Yeah.
alone almost makes me want to read the book.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. I mean, I hope that the book will help people see and hear and feel and experience more and more God moments, God presence, God loving them, God growing and training them. So the answer to your question is actually a bunch of that. So as I was writing the book, and really for me the book was kind of unfolding. I had an outline that I started with, and then there's kind of an outline that it ends like. And so that really was this practice idea, this art of becoming. And I was with Gary. I was with Gary about 8 months ago, Gary, when we were up at Skylark doing a calling weekend together. And at the end of Gary's book, he talks about artistry. And that began to kind of haunt me and began to really begin to affect me in what I was writing. That there's a craft, there's a practice, there's a learning of a way. And Gary talks about it at the end of his book as an art. And as I began to explore that and looked at that more and more, our Zoe logo, our Zoe theme is a heart under this canopy of God and under His provision and protection. And it was one of those moments where I looked at HEART and I read it like you just described that we put on the book, that there's a practice to this kind of life that we're after. And so I played with it a little bit on some fonts, and then I told a couple graphic friends what I was experiencing, what I felt like this book was about, and that's how the text or the graphic part of the text came about. And then the picture of the boy. So I have a friend who I had to run this question by. Look, the Braveheart sword is a significant symbol to a lot of men in this idea of becoming a man who knows how to wield a sword, who can fight, who can battle. And in this spiritual realm, it's been a factor. It's been a piece that I think a lot of men can look at and resonate with, like the Braveheart film itself. And so we wanted to use the sword. And of course, there's some beautiful images online, because Randall Wallace, when he did the movie, and they've got these pictures of the sword in the ground, when Wallace's friend throws it at the end at the Battle of Bannockburn. So anyway, we were thinking, well, maybe we could use that picture, and found out quickly, no, you can't use that picture. There's plenty of copyrights and different things in that. So, but my friend in Hollywood that I knew, he said, but what you could do is stage it. You could stage that picture. So here's what happened. My friend Patrick, who does a lot of our graphics and photography and video, he has a young son. So he goes up to the mountains where his family's from, and he takes one of our Wallace swords, and he's sticking it in the ground in different places and getting the light and different sunrises and sunsets and different things. So we looked at about 30 or 40 pictures. And then here's what happened, Sam. He sent me this picture. He did not know the contents of the book. He just took the assignment and went and did this. He said, but I said, hey, I want to show you, there's a couple pictures I added to the file. I want you to see them, and they're of his son. And he said he couldn't help it. He just had to hold the sword. So I snapped a couple pictures, and I thought you'd like them. And when I saw that picture, I broke open. I just knew God was showing me. I knew it. I just knew He was showing me the imagery and the direction that I was writing in. And so when I told Patrick, I said, Patrick, that's the cover of the book. He said, what do you mean? I said, it's the cover of the book. It's the subtitle of this book is Before You Can Become the Warrior, You Have to Become the Beloved Son. And you got that. I mean, he didn't even know he was taking that picture in an assignment way. That's how fun and how wild and how good God is. And so that's when you see that imagery. So that's how God brought that graphic, that picture to us, and why you see it on the cover of the book.
That's fabulous. I love that. I love also the way you were talking about the heart. You're talking about the art and the practice. I think so often we think of Christianity as the duty, the saluting, the yes sir,
Yeah.
And you're sort of talking about practicing the life. We're not going to have it perfect yet, but we're perfecting it. We're honing it. We're growing into it.
Yeah.
I love all the imagery that comes with the word art. So
Yeah.
I know that you had a lot of chapters in your book, but you had said there's two main sections in your
Yeah.
book. What's the purpose? What are you trying to communicate in each of those
Yeah.
sections?
Yeah. I think we, sometimes you start with the problem. What's the problem? And so the problem was, at large, and my experience with men and men's initiatives that we do is we're not getting better, maybe at the pace or in the broader stroke. I think a lot of the friends who are at base camp and a lot of friends who might walk with other oriented men, they're getting better, but there's still a lot of men who are struggling in the service of Christianity and not enjoying the belovedness. So there was a problem that I started to experience in observation of some of my friends, that that even the way they talked, they wanted roles, they wanted things to do, and attached, there was we call it strings attached. That if they got a role, if they got invited, there was a lot of life and life giving to those roles, but it was not enough to satisfy the longing of their heart. They didn't have a settled heart. They were finding their value and worth from things they did rather than from who they are. And this is something that's come up for years now. I mean, I think we've tried to explore this in a lot of ways, a lot of different ways, and I'm glad. I think we need to continue to explore it and continue to encourage men to keep talking about what does it mean to have your identity in Christ, and what does it look to live that out. And what I tried to do was say that there's a foundational piece to that, and that's this belovedness. We saw it in Jesus' life, and we're actually to become more and more like him. That's how this promise of an abundant life, this promise of he'll never leave us, there's a lot of wonderful promises, but I don't see many men enjoying the very life that they signed up for, a full and abundant life. And so that got me really curious a couple years ago to start asking God some questions and having some conversations with my friends. What is in the way? What is in the way of this intimacy that Jesus seemed to have with the Father, and that if we're becoming more and more like him, we should be knowing more and more about that and experiencing more and more about that, this belovedness, adopted into his family, brought into sonship, and theology is helpful to that. But as you and I were talking yesterday, John and Sam, there should be some experiences, there should be some moments and some encounters. If God is that loving and it's just a theory, I don't think it's going to get us through the battle and through this life. There needs to be, so if you can't see it and enjoy it and feel it and experience it, then there's likely, what I try to share in the book, then there's some things that are in the way, and we need to get things that are in the way of intimacy with God out of the way, because that is what we were made for, is intimacy with God. And if we can't trust him, or if we can't enjoy receiving love, it's going to be a frustrating journey with Christ.
So you started this by talking about no strings attached. Mm-hmm. What did you mean by no strings attached?
Yeah, great question. For me, I find that I tend to get pulled into a conditional love thing, a conditional love way, where either if I give something to my wife or one of my kids, I don't even realize it, but I do more and more now because I look for it. But there's strings attached. I do something for them, and then there's these strings attached. It's conditional. I want them to say thank you. I want them to say, "Oh, you're the best dad in the world." I want them to. It's not free. It's not unconditional. And I do think that strings attached is something that that we all suffer from. When it comes to relationships and it comes to friendships, and I don't mean to keep a record, but there's something in me that does, and I gotta have an even balance at the end of the day. If they paid for dinner last time, well, we got to pay for dinner next time. You know, if we did something for somebody and they didn't send a thank you note, am I okay with that? So I'm noticing that a lot of my training in my journey, not good training, has brought about this conditional way, and yet I'm supposed to understand a very unconditional love of God, and it creates a problem.
Although we experience a conditional, we sort of think,
Yeah.
well, if I've talked to 10 guys this week and if I wrote 14 memos, then everything is okay, which means we're creating the conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't even know it. We don't know.
Projecting onto God ourselves.
Yeah, we've been trained by a world and a system and a performance life and a lot of things that are very subtle but very, very powerful in living a conditional way. So to bring that to an unconditional relationship, I bring a lot of baggage into that, and that's some of the stuff that I think is in the way of my experiencing belovedness, receiving God's love, just because, you know, this little boy that just hit the planet, Gary loves him. He can't help it. He just loves him. I mean, it's just, you can't explain it other than that mysterious and that simple. He just does. He just loves this little guy because he is part of him. He bears an image. He's involved in Gary's family now, and he doesn't do anything but cry. So, you know, I think, what does that look like in a man's life, or what does that look like in our life to experience an unconditional love of God, really, really? And I've just learned that there's some things in my life that need to get out of the way, things that I've believed that aren't true about me, about God, about others, and to try to step out and observe it is a very, very big moment when you can start observing what your way is, where it came from, how you learned it, things like that. So
the first half of your book is basically saying we need to know, experience, understand, feel the belovedness of God, that we are God's beloved. You're spending half a book on this, and I applaud it. You know, write another book, entire book on it. So it's wonderful. I'm glad you do that. Do you talk at all about how we can grow in that? You know, what if you talk to the normal guy who he feels dutiful, but he doesn't quite feel beloved?
Yeah.
Do you talk about that?
Yeah.
Or do you just talk about the importance of it?
Yeah, I think we do talk about how to get some of these things out of the way that are in the way. What would be some things in prayer, in asking God questions? You know, not bringing a paper to him to be graded, but inviting him into the writing of the paper. You know, having him help you see things, invite him to show you things, and then pay attention. So the beloved son piece, wherever we are in our journey, the first part of the book is inviting us to retreat back to this beloved son question and beloved son position that we have before we enter into the battles for the hearts of others. Because the battle really is about whether or not you know you're the beloved. Because if you don't, you step into the battle for the hearts of somebody else, and the first thing the enemy is going to do is make sure that he strikes that chord in you, that place that'll get you stuck or make you defensive or have you be protective, and it's not good. You know, so the battles are about whether or not you know you're the beloved, like Jesus in the desert after the baptism. If you are the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. I mean, Jesus is settled. He doesn't take the bait. He doesn't bite at that. It doesn't provoke, you know, this self-provision or protection. He's able to defend himself as well as bring a fierce answer to the provoking question.
So
Michael,
explain. Go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to say, Michael, today, out of curiosity, I went back and listened to your base camp conversation a year or two ago on your first book, and one of the comments you made was when you learned the teachings on the new heart, the good heart that we have, you made the comment, if this is true, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, okay, is this a further revelation of that? Is this a new revelation along those lines? How does this compare as far as your life to, you know, where is this in your progression in your life?
Yeah, it's stayed with me. It's still an exploration and a conversation I still it's still changing everything. I think it's in this book as well to understand the depths and the mystery and the significance of this place called our heart versus behavior. You know, Jesus wants my heart, so does the enemy. He wants access to my heart, because from there is where people's behavior and their actions. So, you know, these two kingdoms are at war over our hearts. And so it's kind of grown, John, you know, my understanding of the heart, my experience with my own, and walking in deeper understanding, but also, as you said earlier, Sam, the practice of living from the heart and life from the heart. What does that look like, and what's that feel like, and how does that affect people in my life, in my world?
So you start the book being a beloved. You spend many pages, chapters on being the beloved son. Then you move into being a warrior, and you know you haven't spent time now talking about how to wield your sword and how to wield your shield and how to march and, you know, how to survive in the desert without water for 20 days. All your preparation, all the equipping that you're talking about right now is being a beloved son. Is that right?
It's the first half, because that's what the battle really is about, whether or not you know that you are. And you can't go by it. It's bestowed. It's God giving it to you and receiving it. You know, so to be able to receive validation and receive love, that's a trick that some men, that's kind of the first obstacle that a lot of men have to come to. And why do I have a problem receiving God's love? Now I can serve Him and try to show Him that I love Him, but those are the strings attached, Sam, right? So it's back to receiving. But because that's when the transition can happen. When you have a settled heart, now you can enter into the battle for the hearts of others, guarding your heart and going after theirs, speaking life into them, validating, encouraging them, pointing them towards the Father, where you've gotten this bestowing, where you've gotten the validation. You know that He loves them too and has great things for them, and so you don't become their the salesman, or you don't have to become the one who's manufacturing that stuff, but to point them, because that's where you got it, was from the Heavenly Father, that He validated, He's loving you, and you point them to that, to Him.
So you're saying in becoming the beloved son and knowing it, experiencing it, believing it, understanding it, sensing it on your heart, that is the equipping.
That's the training. Yeah.
That's the training. That's the equipping us.
Yeah.
And then we move into the war with the equipping, the training that God has given us.
Yeah.
And there's a passage in, I think it's 1 Corinthians, it might be 2 Corinthians, but where Paul says, we comfort those with the comfort we've been given.
Yeah.
And, I mean, in some senses, that's what you're saying, is God has comforted us, He's trained us, He's equipped us with this comfort.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing we can give.
So Michael, let me jump in for a second. Jim McFarland said, Michael, I see God's belovedness towards me looking back. Do you now see it in anticipation of the future? Do you guys hear me, or did I freeze, or did you freeze, or what?
I think Michael froze.
That was just too much. The whole question was too much. Yeah.
Good question, Jim.
Yeah.
Michael looks frozen.
He does. So why don't we, as Michael works on this, why don't we answer that question? I think that's a brilliant question, because it is easier to look back and realize the grace and the kindness and the gentleness of God as we look back on our life, but it's hard to look forward, and I think see ourselves in the belovedness of God as we look at future things we're afraid of, we're anticipating. You know, I think that is a challenge, just to be able to rest in, you know, the fatherhood of God over our life.
So I'm actually struggling a little bit with that now, because I'm in a season where I have discovered the belovedness, but it's been through a lot of hardship, and the last year or so has been a real season of favor, of blessing, and Pam and I both are kind of thinking, you know, when's the shoe going to drop? Going to drop? You know. So looking forward, I'm not sure I have grabbed the belovedness, my belovedness, going forward.
Yeah. And by the way, Michael just texted me and said, he said, "Holy moly, the power just went out." So, okay, it might be just the two of us. If he gets his power on, he'll jump back in. So, okay, so Sam, how would you respond to Jim's question?
So here's something that Michael said yesterday when John and I were talking with him that I thought was really great. I would say yes, a lot of the way we see God's belovedness is looking back on our life. You know, what's that famous quote that we love so much from the Danish philosopher? Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. Soren Kierkegaard. So there is a way I think we see God's beloved looking backwards. But what I liked about what Michael said yesterday, and I hope he gets back on and says it again, is he said this is not a stage that we ever get a diploma from. So we never pass through the stage of the belovedness. You know, we never say, okay, been there, done that, I've got that. Now I'm on to my next stage of being, you know, a warrior or being a king or being a sage or a cowboy or whatever all those other stages people call them. He said this is a stage we always stay in. And so, and I like that. I think he's right. He's saying that you don't just experience this from ages 0 through 5 and then you move into something else. This is the constant strength that we get. So yes, we're going to get it looking back, but I think, Jim, that when it's done right, you know, when our relationship with the Lord is right, it's going to be going forward. You know, I just got done with a sailing weekend with my 4 kids who are age 30, 28, 26, and 24. And I've always had a good relationship with my kids, but it's the best it's ever been. You know, they are my beloved more now in a certain sense than they ever were, because as adults, it's a different kind of relationship. When they were 6, they would say, can I go out and play? Or I would say, go clean your room. When you're 30, they say, you know, Dad, I just had an argument with my wife. What do you think I should do? But they expect the dialogue. They expect the conversation. It's much more intimate. It's not just commanded. And I think that with God, you know, of course he's going to say, don't steal, you know. But I think that's for the 3-year-old in us. I think that as we get older, we're going to say, I don't know what's going on with my life. And he says, let's talk about it. I mean, I think that the belovedness is something we never graduate from. It's something that we just get deeper in. So I think it changes as we mature, but it changes for the better, and it keeps getting better. We get more beloved. We get a deeper sense of it.
Now, here's a very interesting comment that Yvette gave us over on the side of the Secret Garden. And she said, now here's a heavy thought. Knowing we are the beloved son or daughter means that even when we choose not to enter the war, we are still the beloved. And you know that is, I mean, that's a phenomenal thought. That still, even though we've been created to play a role in the thing that God is doing, if we don't play it, we're still the beloved versus the cast out son, the disappointing son or daughter, and so on.
And that combines the point that Michael kept saying, which is there's no strings attached here. It's not a strings attached relationship. With Jim's question about is it just looking in the past, Yvette is saying, even right now we can experience the belovedness. Hey, Michael.
Hey, I'm on my phone now. I think I was scrambling. I think I got on the phone here, so I'm back for a minute.
Okay.
Right.
So Sam, finish your thought, and then we'll invite Michael into a question here.
Okay. So I was just saying that Yvette is saying that right now, or in Michael's words, it's a no strings attached, and so we can know our belovedness right now. We don't just look back, as Jim was asking, but we're in an ever increasing growingness of our sense of our belovedness from the Father. So.
Okay, so
I like that. I agree.
I knew you would agree because I was quoting you. I still, Michael, I think one of my favorite lines from yesterday was when you said, "You never get a diploma."
Yeah. The landscape changes. I mean, just as Gary, when we first, asked me how I was doing. I mean, this is a new place. 2 kids in college, 1 at home, and how am I experiencing God now? Who am I now in the story? My roles with 2 daughters are different, and a third that's now home, and It's just Robin and I. I mean, the landscape changes, so it's not a degree that you acquire. It's just such a journey that you're on, and so yeah, I'm finding more relief in that idea, Sam, than I used to approach it the other way. Achievement, accomplishment, performance, and so I'm so much more enjoying this other way, being more present, enjoying His presence more, rather than kind of taking my life as a paper to do and turn in and have Him grade it, and be underachieving and continuing to be striving for more and not settled at all, that I'm not enough. I'm not enough for Him. Because other places in my life, that was the message I got growing up and coming along. I'm not enough, and that really leaked into my walk with God, rather than the belovedness bringing that to these other places in my life.
So along these lines, a number of guys have read different books about different stages in a masculine journey.
Yeah.
Let's say that you're talking to a man or a woman who's very familiar with Ransomed Heart. What are you saying here? What are you putting an emphasis on in this book? Someone who's been on 10 retreats and they read all the books.
Yeah, I think personally for me, Sam, it was something that I moved away from a little too quickly and into other stages and other places that were probably more age appropriate. I didn't realize some of the damage that was still done, that I was carrying with me, that I needed to circle back, retreat back to this place of reconstruction, renovation by God in this area of belovedness. So He really, the more that I was hopeful to be helpful to others in this journey, the more I started seeing an unsettled heart and these strings attached, and it brought me back to this place. So my encouragement to anybody who's been walking in this, or learned through some of the Ransom Heart or Noble Heart, is circle back to this and see, because I believe there's just so much in here. This is not something that we graduate. You said this on the phone call the other day, and I'll quote you, Sam, and that is, we need this in every stage of our life, belovedness. That foundation, it's what we fall back to, it's what we stand on, it's where we get all the good stuff and how we get through so much of the hard stuff in our lives that this fallen place and fallenness seems to create for us is this belovedness. It's a place that we will need to return to again and again. And I kind of had checked the box after a few years of boyhood wounds and agreements, and God has really ushered me back into this for the role that I'm in now and the place that I'm in my life now, that this isn't something that I carry this with me every day. This is the love relationship of a father to a son, and yet I'm an older son, and I love my time with my dad. I'm still his son, but it's a different relationship than when I was a boy. You know what I mean? But I still want to be the beloved to him. I still want his affection, his love. I want to know that I'm okay, and he's one of the only ones on the planet who can settle my heart. And so what if that was true in the spiritual reality, spiritual realm, spiritual experience? And I think I got shortchanged on that. And I'm not sure it was God's fault. I think it was me, running off to play with the other boys or moving on into other stages of my life without keeping this belovedness as an important part of the journey as I believe it is now.
Hey, Michael, Bob Kane posed a question. How would you express the tie-in where you're understanding receiving this intimacy as a beloved son? How would you express the tie-in of that to our pursuit of our calling?
Wow, that's Gary. You want to answer that one?
Hey, he asked you. You're the guest. I can't wait to hear.
Oh man. Well, I think for me, it's absolutely aided in the calling piece, in that I'm free. There's not verdicts and juries on validating me in this physical realm. I'm free to know who I am and to bring that to the experimentation and the exploration of calling, so that when something doesn't go well, I'm not going to quickly interpret that as my fault or I did it wrong, because a lot of things don't go well, especially first times, and especially when you're learning and walking with God, and He's showing you through these coordinates of story, desire, and journey. I'll give you a great example. It just happened today. I'm talking to my daughter, who a trip for the summer and the summer term studying abroad fell through. And she was so disappointed and felt like God was why did He get her hopes and desires up for that? And we started talking, and I said, Ash, what if God was just showing you something that you really wanted, but not delivering how He was going to, invite you into this, but raising the desire? I don't think I could have said that, John, to her 4 or 5 years ago, but rather say it's okay that this particular organization and this particular class didn't work out. Don't misinterpret what you're excited about, and don't misplace what you're that there's disappointment. I mean, there's other summer, but God, what if He's just showing you what you want? Do you want to go study abroad, or do you want to go travel? Those are very different things.
That is such a refreshing perspective.
So she didn't react as good as you did, but we got there eventually.
No wonder.
Yeah, she didn't say, Dad, that is so refreshing. No, she didn't say that, but that's okay. No strings attached, right? So, but we did.
You will.
We did get to explore together. What is this really about? What were your hopes set on? What were you looking for? And I think it was really helpful to realize that this isn't gone. That means to this is maybe gone. That door's shut, but her desire and her hopes of going somewhere this summer, of experiencing another culture, but that's different than studying abroad. Are we using studying abroad to go travel somewhere, or are we traveling somewhere because there's a certain class or professor or an environment that you want to be in for your major? Those are very different. And so discernment is a big deal for a warrior or a warrior princess. I mean, to have that kind of discernment is where we go in the second half of the book, really.
Okay, so Michael, let me ask you a question. You're sitting down, you're talking to a person, and you're trying to assess internally, where they are in just the life and the rest of living as a beloved. And perhaps to be a little extreme and crass, some people seem to be kingdom party people. They're always looking for the next party to feel good.
The next event, yeah.
Yeah, the next event, the worship thing, the conference, the whatever it was. They just feel good about everything. And then you have maybe the kingdom type A people who are always having to build something, do something,
Yeah.
Extremes here. What kind of questions would you ask? What would you look for to find out how much this person is truly living in, resting in the belovedness of their relationship with God?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, a settled heart, it looks a certain way. They don't have to have the spotlight, but when an invitation comes to speak into something or to share, I think a true beloved son, beloved daughter is probably more apt to ask some questions, not hide behind questions, but ask some questions to get to the gold that's there in a conversation. So this idea of having a settled heart, what does that look like? It's okay that you're not the center of attention, and it's okay that you're not, cowering from being the center of attention. That you're okay with the things that come or don't come, and you're in a conversation. One of the things that's really important in the book is this whole false self. I think we've underestimated how bad, how unhelpful, and how in the false self is, and this is in the way of belovedness. It really is. The false self creature, I don't even give it the dignity of calling it you or a person. It's an it, it's a thing. It's not you, but yet it will speak like it is you. It will try to judge. It will run this commentary, this ongoing commentary that's accusatory or judgmental. So if that's a place to start for belovedness, if you're subject to that, to the false self, and that's dominant, then that's a real important place to go for healing. And why is this that question, God, what is this about? Why do I hear this commentary about myself or about you or about this person, especially if that person's close, your son, your daughter, your wife? I mean, this little I call it this unruly guest that's inside of us, this false self, is a very, very not to be underestimated in terms of our belovedness. So I think for a lot of my life, I was just false self-dominant. And now the scales are starting to even up through healing and restoration and awareness and understanding and deepening. I've always loved your awakening, deepening, fulfilling, to step into that and let God do a work that's deep and settles things. That's how, then I think that person, when they're at an event or they're in a party or they're in a classroom or they're in the car with you, there's just a peace about them that's so attractive. And then I think the warrior can enter into helping somebody else experience that peace, but to go to God for that kind of peace and step into this process, this journey, this exploration of healing, restoration that leads to freedom and being a beloved son, being a beloved daughter, and enjoying that role and that place in the kingdom first.
Yeah, that's good. By the way, Sam lost his internet, so he's been gone for never quite seen this happen before. So, and we need to wrap it up here in a couple of minutes. This is so good. I just want to say I really love that answer about being with a person and this is there a settledness to the action, the momentum of their life.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just think maybe another way to say that is, what is the force behind what they're doing?
Yeah.
You can feel that from a person where they're just absolutely, it's essential that it works or that you accept what they say or you have the right response or everything's going to explode versus there is a settledness, there's no force behind it, it's just an offer.
I think you're talking about, Gary, I think you're talking about Jesus. That's how he was.
Yeah.
I really believe that. That's how he was, and that's who we're becoming. There's a line in the book, and it comes into play later, but what if we could be men who had nothing to hide, nothing to prove, and nothing to fear? That would be a settled man. Yeah. And I think that's how Jesus lived. I really do. And I think we're becoming like him as image bearers. And I think there's this growing and training and validating. And training's a big deal in the back half of the book, that you become a beloved son so that you can then become part of the kingdom, sharing the kingdom, living in the kingdom, offering the kingdom. That's what Jesus did, and that's what I think. And it won't be service. It'll be through intimacy and relationship. We'll just do it because we can't not do it. It won't be a mission that we have to go create. It'll be a mission that'll come to us. We'll be responsible and we'll be privileged in this role. It'll be that's the track I think I'm on, and I think that's the track I wanted to share through this book.
Yeah, that's good. John, a final thought from you or question?
I can't wait to get the book.
I can't wait for it to be finished. We're Kevin Miles and I, and like a lot of things, I've heard this a lot of my life, Gary. It needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it's not your favorite thing to hear as a basketball player or as a student or as an author or a hope to be author, but it's a good thing. Even the process of this book, I found God loving me and me enjoying that. And it's okay. It's okay that it needs some more work, that it needs some more attention. I'm not afraid of that. Let's go. Let's get to work and let's see how good it can become. So it's been good.
Well, Michael, thank you. And let's just plan on doing another one after the book releases and people have a little bit of time to get that into their hands.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
That'd be great. Thank you guys. Love you guys. Thank you for what you're doing in the kingdom. Base Camp, it's a wonderful, everybody who's on, I hope they stay on and stay with you guys because you're offering some really important things. Thanks for letting me be a part.
Yep, you're welcome. So thanks everybody for joining us. This was good. Again, look at the lineup of things we have. We just want things that will help you stay alert and oriented and walking in both your belovedness and your calling. So thank you. Good night, everybody. See ya.